Okay.
Excellent. Okay.
Thank you. Okay. So he knows it's only 7 minutes.
All right, you have 7 minutes. Go for it, Barrett.
Thank you, Barrett.
Thank you.
Uh, Things have become more plain to the extent that we can now reach out to people who 6, 7 years ago would not be interested in anything radical seeming or anything that sort of depends upon as a pretext that the system is broken. We now have a larger pool of recruits to pick from when we talk about doing activism or putting together large movements. I was in the shoe. I was in the hole in a prison, uh, illegally. Actually, I've been put there without cause and without paperwork for a couple of weeks when the Republican National Convention occurred, and I heard that on the radio. And so, when you've lived in a cage, uh, contrary to the rule of law, you do get added perspective on uh, how things can go wrong. Uh, you learn about what the people who work for states are willing to do when it comes down to it, and that's something that could be evident to anyone to the extent that you follow police brutality, official corruption, the history of the CIA, the history of the NSA. These are things that kind of lie beneath the surface, and now they're coming to the foreground. That means that for those of us who see it as our duty to address these issues, we now have a really extraordinary, unprecedented uh, chance to start pushing back against these things. The pursuance system, which we presented in part tonight and on our website at pursuanceproject.org, and in some articles and documentaries that have appeared, Vice Television, NPR next December, that sort of thing. This system, uh, we're very lucky to have to be in a place where we can ensure this is going to be successful. We're able to do things that we couldn't do years ago. We can build up a board of directors, including two former CIA agents who have been critics of the agency, including John Kiriakou. We can bring on Birgitta Jonsdottir of the Icelandic Parliament, head of the Pirate Party over there. We can bring on academics and journalists like Russ Baker, people who are now more willing to try something new, simply because the alternatives, the traditional, the serious alternatives as they've been presented, are now becoming more visibly unviable. So, over the next year or so, in addition to the 1,100 people or so we've recruited thus far as of today, we expect to bring on thousands and thousands more. We expect to see them engage in a unprecedented reversal of fortunes, so to speak. We think that, from what we've seen from people who have risen to the occasion using the internet, people like Aaron Swartz, obviously, who saw that there was now a way to, if you had an idea, that you could get other people to see that idea and to act upon it. Sorry, do I message? And as we've seen more proof of concepts, as we've seen more successes here and there, things like the great campaign to stop SOPA a few years back, which was a very, a very loose, spontaneous campaign of action by both mainstream and sort of underground radical entities and figures that was successful. We do see that there is things that can be done. When we look at Tunisia, a revolution that was driven by the internet. The revolutionaries in that case had to use makeshift tools like Facebook, which in turn the government were using against them. But they were ultimately successful, and they did ultimately, against all odds, establish a democracy in that region, something they don't really necessarily get much support from Western countries in doing. We do see that there are tremendous results that can be achieved. And so the question is, how can we ensure that the people who are putting their lives on the line, ranging down from them to the people who, just everyday people who want to do a little bit more, how can they all be best be served? What tools can we give them, and what format can we give them, whereby their talents and energy and risks are harnessed to the potential that needs to be done if we're going to confront a world of criminalized institutions, a world of inertia and apathy. If we're going to go up against everything in front of us, and we think the pursuance system is sufficient to do that. We believe that in addition to the sort of the here and there small scale victories we'll be able to achieve in different things, nonprofits, political organizing, using better proliferating charitable programs. In addition to all those small pieces, we think the whole eventually, by virtue of self-organization by participants, is going to become greater than the sum of its parts. We see this as eventually leading to the development of a sort of civic superorganism, combining thousands and thousands of people, each organized, sort of self-organized, into entities that are independent yet linked, encrypted, safe as far as possible from inspection by criminalized governments and the companies that work with them, capable of accessing very easily the latest in tools for information collation, that sort of thing. Constantly learning from each other and teaching what they know as activists, as academics, as journalists, as researchers, as citizens, and ensuring that everyone who wants to be involved, who wants to push back against what's happening, has the absolute best opportunity to do so, using best practices, using the best structures, and the best people. That's the vision we've had for a long time. It's something that we kind of saw a makeshift version of with things like Anonymous. We've seen some great efforts like Telecomics, in which people have come together in an IRC channel to, over the following years, compile information on these companies that are conducting surveillance and black ops for governments here at home and abroad. We've seen a lot of these things work, and they've worked even when it didn't look like they should work. When they these were people with an idea and a IRC channel, perhaps a website, a forum, and they've managed to attract hundreds of people, very capable people who don't have an outlet right now for doing the things that they know need to be done. So you've probably heard, you hear references to, someday if we could only, if we could harness, 1/10 of the sun's energy, we'd be able to power the world. This system is predicated on the idea that if we harness 1/10 of a percentage point of the energy and talents and knowledge and capabilities and the willpower of those people who still want an open society and are willing to do the things that are necessary to achieve that open society, that given the nature of the institutions we're up against, given how fragile they are when it comes to their lack of moral capital, we think this is a contest that ultimately can be won gradually. And we would like to know that we would like to think that over the next 5 or 6 years, that everyone who has sort of been thinking, all I can do is retweet things right now. All I can do is kind of like, see these articles and say, oh, wow, something's wrong, and tell my friends about it. We want them to have a way where they can be a part of something that actually answers back and says no to these institutions. That's necessary more now than ever. Everyone who knows the Aaron Swartz's story knows the extent to which these people in government and certain institutions, the extent to which they are playing for keeps. So eventually we'll be able to play for keeps too. And that's going to be something that will change the international conversation, I think, for the better. Thank you.
Great. All right. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Barrett. I really appreciate everything you did, and we'll see you tomorrow at 2 p.m.